Prohibition began in the United States in 1920. No alcohol could be made, transported, or sold for human consumption, says the federal government. They wasted a great deal of time and money trying to prevent people from drinking, but people are going to do what they do, and they drank. The problem is drinking became much more dangerous during Prohibition, which did not end until 1933. The primary type of alcohol that's suited to human consumption, i.e., it's not fatal in reasonable amounts, is ethanol. But ethanol is not the only type of alcohol. All kinds of substances are alcohol. Methanol, for example, which is cheaper and easier to obtain during Prohibition. Sucrose and cholesterol are both alcohols as well. Isopropanol, which is rubbing alcohol, isobutanol, methylbutanol, and propanol are all alcohols that are typically used in industrial or medical processes and can be fatal to humans in very small amounts. Prohibition opened a big market. Bootleggers, who existed prior to Prohibition, expanded greatly in number as soon as alcohol was outlawed and started producing their own brews and concoctions for sale to anyone willing to purchase them. Oh, so many stills popped up everywhere. So many. The problem for the public then became what the hell bootleggers were putting in those stills and what was coming out of them. In too many cases, the ethanol produced was too high in concentration and people died. Then there were the problems of methanol being in the booze. Methanol is very toxic to people in very small amounts. People went blind, people died. People still came back to the bootleggers, though. Blindness, strokes, and death were not going to stop them. Sometimes the bootleggers were obtaining and selling industrial alcohols. Same result. Some folks went blind and some died, and people were still coming back to purchase their drink. That there should have told government authorities something about the strength of alcohol addiction. That there should have told government authorities most of what they needed to know about how well their prohibition scheme was working. Nah, just kidding. Government authorities just doubled down, and about halfway through Prohibition in 1926, the federal government told producers of industrial alcohols that they had to add methanol and wood grain alcohol or other questionable substances like mercury salts and acetone to the product in order to discourage people from drinking it. Now, if people are going to go blind at the bootlegger and people are dying at the bootlegger, what made the government think that adulterating industrial alcohols would work to stop folks from drinking it? The idea made no sense at all. It was just a purely authoritarian act. In New York City alone, during Christmas of 1926, 23 people died. 60 more were very sick with alcohol toxicity, and dozens were blinded. That was just New York City, just at Christmas. That year, some 400 people died and 1,200 were sickened. On December 28, 1926, the chief medical officer of New York City issued a public statement. And I'm quoting, "The government knows it is not stopping drinking by putting poison in alcohol. It knows what the bootleggers are doing with it, and yet it continues its poisoning process, heedless of the fact that people determined to drink are daily absorbing that poison. Knowing this to be true, the United States government must be charged with the moral responsibility for the deaths that poison liquor causes." End quote. It was estimated that 10,000 Americans would die from alcohol poisoned by the government's direction. In 1927, again, just in New York City, deaths went from 400 to 700. And despite doctors speaking out, Prohibition would continue for 7 more years. Insurance companies would record an increase of 300% in alcoholism rates during the 20s. Did that stop the government? Did they learn anything from that? No. 30,000 illegal alcohol joints, speakeasies, existed in New York City by 1929. Did the government get it yet? Nope. Gangs grew rich and powerful on the back of Prohibition. They didn't care if folks were blind or dead. Did that change the government's approach? No, it did not. They continued to mandate the poisoning of alcohol all the way to the end of Prohibition. Despite knowing of the persistence of poisoning, they also in 1927 tried to strengthen enforcement by moving Prohibition enforcement over to the Department of Justice. Prohibition agents like the famous Eliot Ness, who brought down Al Capone, did very little to bring an end to alcohol consumption. You would think that the government would learn something from all of this, but no, they didn't. In the 1970s, they concocted a scheme to spray Mexican marijuana crops with paraquat to kill the crops, but also to discourage people from smoking the drug, because paraquat might poison some people. Public outcry is what stopped their plans, but the U.S. is increasingly dealing with a populace that doesn't trust their governing agencies. Might they wonder why? Thank you for listening. If you're enjoying these videos and want more, don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notifications so that you don't miss any videos. Thank you for watching. We really appreciate it.